I'm sorry I'm late, but I was traveling all day to get here from Italy, so I was a little tired when I arrived. So I thought it would be nice to start with some meditation, to do some meditation to begin with. And so we'll do some meditation together, then after that I'll start the talk. So are any of you new to meditation? Anyone here has never done meditation before?
I tried it, but I never succeeded. I slept all the time. I fell asleep.
It's good to keep trying. Don't give up. Yeah, actually, trying to meditate in the evening can be a little difficult. If you've been busy all day, working, running around, doing things, then in the evening you sit and you close your eyes and it's quite easy to fall asleep. But actually in the Tibetan tradition they explain some methods that can help us to stay awake when we meditate. So one is that we try to sit with our back straight, because if you kind of slouch like that, then you're more likely to fall asleep. But if you can try to sit up straight, then that can help you to be more awake. And another thing is to not close the eyes completely, because if we close our eyes, then it's like darkness. There's darkness, and then it's easier to fall asleep. So the Tibetan lamas that I've studied with say it's better not to close your eyes completely, but leave them open a little bit. And if you have your eyes looking down on the floor in front of you or the table in front of you, then you're not going to be seeing things that would distract your attention. But keeping them open a little bit allows some light to come in. There's light coming in, and that helps you to stay awake. So you can try that as well.
I think then... Is it on? I'm not sure if it's on.
No,
Het is vandaag, hè?
there's no light on.
Ja, eerst wel. Nou, het is...
Hört man mich?
Ja.
Ja,
Closer. Oh. Like that?
Yeah, try to turn it on a bit more.
It is working. Okay, so some of you, that's better, yeah? So some of you who have been meditating before, and if you know a method of meditation to calm down your mind and stay in the present, keep your mind in the present, like mindfulness meditation and so forth. So if you already know such a method, you can use that. And then for those who don't know of any method, I'll just briefly explain one that you could use. And that is to watch the breath, to use the breath as a kind of object of focusing our mind. Because our body is breathing all the time. So we don't have to invent anything to meditate on or to focus on. All we have to do is pay attention to the breath that's happening all the time. Breath is coming in, breath is going out. And so paying attention to the breath helps your mind to calm down, rather than being busy and frantic. And also, it helps to keep your mind in the present, because much of the time, probably most of the time, our mind is thinking about either the past, for example, memories of the past experiences. And the past doesn't have to mean a long time ago, it can mean just today, things you were doing today. So often our past experiences come up into our mind and we go over them again and again, think about them again and again. So that occupies a lot of our time in our mind. And another thing that happens in our mind is we think about the future. We make plans for what we're going to do later tonight, for example, tomorrow, next week, next month. So thinking about the future. So a lot of the time, this is what's happening in our mind. We're either thinking about the past or we're thinking about the future. So we don't spend a lot of time just staying in the present moment. So by watching our breath, that helps us to stay in the present because our breath is happening in the present. Our breath is right here, in this place, and right now, in the present moment. So by watching the breath coming in and going out, naturally, our attention, our mind is in the present moment, not in the past, not in the future. So this is a kind of basic practice of meditation that many people find helpful. Just watch the breath coming in and going out. But it's natural that the mind doesn't stay on the breath. You know, you might begin by watching your breath coming in and going out. And then in a short time, other thoughts start coming in. Thoughts of the past, things that happened to you during the day, for example, or thoughts of the future, what you're going to do next after this class or tomorrow or whatever. But this is normal because this is what our mind is used to doing. This is our habit. We have the habit of thinking about the past and the future and other places and people and plans. So our mind has that habit, and it's very hard to change that. Okay, so don't be surprised if you find that your mind is not staying on the breath, but is going away to other things. That's completely normal. But when we're meditating, what we try to do is catch our mind when it goes away from the breath or whatever we're meditating on, to bring it back, to kind of catch it and bring it back to the breath, to watching the breath coming in and going out. And you may have to do that again and again. The mind keeps wanting to go away, and you bring it back. It goes away, you bring it back. So that's normal. Don't be upset or don't be surprised if that happens. So it's like, what we're trying to do in meditation is training our mind, like teaching our mind to do something different than what it normally does. And it's not easy. It does take time, it does take effort. But even just trying to do it is a good thing. It's beneficial. Okay, so let's try that now for a little while. Maybe for about 10 minutes. And like I say, if you already know a method for practicing meditation, for practicing mindfulness, for calming your mind down, you can use that. Otherwise, you can use this method of watching the breath. So try to sit with your back straight. But let your body be relaxed. Don't be tight, tense. Let your shoulders relax. You can have your hands resting on your knees if you wish, or in the Tibetan tradition, we usually put our hands on our lap, with the right hand on top of the left hand, and the two thumbs touching like this. And it's also said to put your neck a little bit down. Don't have your head raised up high, nor too far down, but just slightly downwards. And like I said before, it's good if you can keep your eyes open a little bit, so there's some light coming into your eyes. And that can help you to stay awake, not fall asleep. And also, try to have your mouth and your jaw relaxed. Don't clench your teeth, but just let your mouth be in a natural way. And another thing that's said in the Tibetan tradition is if you put the tip of your tongue on the roof of your mouth, behind your upper teeth, then you won't need to swallow so much when you meditate. Swallowing can become distraction or a disturbance when you meditate. So just putting your tongue there behind the upper teeth can help to solve that problem. So again, try to be as relaxed as possible. Let go of any tension you may have, any place in your body. And let your breath be natural. Don't breathe in any unnatural way, but just breathe in a natural way. So sometimes people say that when they meditate on the breath, they pay attention to the breath, they find that they're kind of controlling their breath. But it shouldn't be like that. You shouldn't need to control your breath. You should just let your body breathe as it normally does. Your body knows how to breathe. There's no need to interfere with that. So just let your body breathe as it normally does. Let the breath come in and go out in its natural way. And then just with your mind, with your awareness, be aware of the breath. Or pay attention to the breath as it's coming in and going out. Now, what this actually means is that we pay attention to feelings or sensations in our body as the breath is coming in and going out. Like we can feel our belly expanding, we can feel our chest and our shoulders rising up a little bit. So there's certain sensations in your body accompanying the breath coming in and going out. So just pay attention to those. And one thing that's helpful is to count your breaths. One way of doing that is to say to yourself, breathing in, breathing out, 1, breathing in, breathing out, 2, and continue counting up to 5 breaths or up to 10 breaths as you wish. Then start again at 1 when you do reach 5 or 10. So that's optional, you don't have to count, but it is helpful. It's helpful to keep your mind focused on your breath rather than wandering away. And if your mind does wander away, if it starts thinking about something else, when you notice that, try to let go of the other thought, the other thing you're paying attention to. Let go of that. Take your mind away from that and bring it back to the breath. Now, before you open your eyes, let's spend a few more minutes generating a positive state of mind, a positive motivation as our reason for being here tonight. So if you are familiar with the idea of bodhicitta, the mind of enlightenment, meaning the wish to become enlightened, to become a Buddha, in order to help others as much as possible, to help them be free of suffering, to help them find happiness and peace. So if you know about bodhicitta and you're comfortable with that idea, then you can bring that into your mind as your reason for being here tonight. For example, you can think, I'm here tonight because I want to learn something that will help me to get closer to enlightenment, to becoming a Buddha, so that I can become more and more beneficial to others. But if you're not familiar with the idea of bodhicitta, then you might be able to generate some other altruistic state of mind. Altruistic means wanting to help others, wanting to be of benefit to others. I think everyone does feel that way to some extent. For example, we all have our family, our friends, our neighbors, people we work with, and we want to help them. We don't want to hurt them. We want to do what's helpful, what brings happiness and peace to them. So that's a kind of altruistic intention, the wish to benefit others and not harm them. So actually everything that the Buddha taught is to help us to bring about that aspiration of being of benefit to others. Of course, we need to help ourselves. We need to develop ourselves and learn how to have more peace and happiness in ourselves. But only helping ourselves is rather limited, narrow. And it's good if we can open our mind, open our heart, expand our heart to include more and more people, and look for ways in which we can help others as much as we can. So if you feel inspired by that idea, then see if you can bring into your mind a thought like, I'm here tonight so that I can learn how to be more helpful to others as well as to myself, to bring more peace and happiness to other people and to the world in general. So try to have some kind of thought like that as your reason for being here tonight. And when you feel ready, you can slowly open your eyes, relax your position if you need to. So, I think this is my third time here, isn't it? And this time I was asked to give a course on emptiness in daily life. my idea is that part of the time I will talk and share my understanding of this topic, but we'll also spend some time meditating, doing some meditations to see how we can use this topic in our daily life. And there will also be a chance for discussion and question and answers. So I hope that you have questions that you will feel comfortable to ask, and I'll try my best to answer them. So this topic of emptiness, maybe some of you haven't heard about it before. I know that Birgit has been coming here for a few years and she's taught the whole Madhyamika Vitara, is that right? So this is a text, a classic Indian text on the subject of emptiness. So have any of you done that? Did you do that course? The Madhyamika Vitara field? Part-time. But, so okay, a few. Have any of you heard other teachings about emptiness? Some teachings? Yeah? Are any of you totally unfamiliar with it? You've never heard any teachings before or read any books about it? Like it's a completely unknown topic? Yeah, so all of you... Huh?
I just tell them they can, if they never heard, they're allowed to show.
Yeah, I would like to know. Okay. Well, I hope all of us will learn something, will improve our understanding of this topic. It's interesting, I sometimes hear people say that it's this topic that really attracted them to Buddhism. Yeah, that they were just so fascinated by this topic of emptiness. And they were drawn to Buddhism because of this topic. And so I think that is the experience that many Western people have. Because it's an unusual topic. I mean, some of the topics in Buddhism you can find in other religions as well, like love and compassion. Okay, in Buddhism we talk about love and compassion and having a good heart and being helpful to others. But those themes are quite universal. In all religions they talk about the importance of love and compassion and helping others and so forth. But emptiness? As far as I know, there's no religion, no other religion that talks about emptiness. So it's unique. I think, as far as I know, it's unique to Buddhism. I mean, there might be some similar ideas in other religions. I'm not an expert on world religions, so I haven't studied all of them. But as far as I know, there's nothing exactly like this topic in other religions or even in philosophy. So, what is emptiness? What is this thing we call emptiness? Maybe if any of you have any idea, you could say. Like for example, if your mother or your brother, sees on your table, they see a book about emptiness, and they say, "What's that? What's emptiness?" And what would you say? How would you answer that question? And just in a few words, just a simple.
For me, it's a kind of meaningless.
Hmm?
For me, it's a kind of meaningless.
Meaningless.
Yes.
Emptiness means meaningless. Well, does the German word, what connotation is that?
It's Leerheit means means there's nothing. It's like empty. Like emptiness,
Okay.
Leere, with double E, of Leere.
It's like empty of something, yeah? Leer van etwas, Leerheit.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Often also associated with void, void of meaning. But my understanding was it's something that unlike of this interdependent existence, is beyond or transcendent of this realm where everything is interdependently existent.
Beyond the realm where things are interdependent. Anyone else? Any other ideas? I mean, don't worry about saying something that's wrong, okay? Don't. just say what comes to your mind. What ideas do you
It's
have?
just the way things are.
The way things
It's
are.
just the way things really exist.
Yeah. Well, that is true, yes, according to Buddhism. Emptiness isn't meaningless or nothing. It actually is something. and it's actually, the way that everything exists. It's like a quality, it's like a characteristic to every phenomena. The true meaning, the true reality, the true way of existing of every single phenomena in the universe. So it is something. It's something, and it's something very important, very significant. So it isn't like nothing. Yeah, like what you said. It's meaningless.
Well, I guess I misunderstood the topic.
Yeah, it is difficult to understand. It is difficult, and what you say is actually what many people think when they see the word emptiness or voidness. They think nothing, like nothingness, non-existence, like complete non-existence. So there are many misunderstandings of the topic emptiness. So hopefully in this weekend we can come to a more correct understanding of what emptiness is. But it is difficult. It's a very, very difficult topic. It's one of the most difficult things in the whole of Buddhism. And just to give you an idea of that, like the monks, you must have geshis coming and teaching here sometimes, right? Tibetan geshis, Tibetan lamas. And then their education, usually they study for about 12 years, basic material, basic topics in Buddhism for about 12 years. Then they study emptiness for 4 years. So it's a little bit like PhD level, that kind of level. Yeah, you study many, many other things first, and you build up, a really good understanding, really good basis in your mind, and then you study emptiness. And I remember once meeting a monk who had just finished his study of emptiness, a 4-year study. So I said, "Oh, so now you understand emptiness?" He said, No. So that shows it's not easy. Yeah? It's not something we can just easily get. So I remember my own experience when I first started learning Buddhism. I went to Dharamsala in India. I was going to classes at the Tibetan library in Dharamsala. And whenever this topic came up, when there was some explanation about emptiness, I just felt like I was listening to another language, like Chinese, like they were talking in Chinese. I just didn't get it at all what they were talking about. So it was actually years before I felt like I finally got some understanding of what emptiness is all about. But still, I don't have a perfect understanding. There's still many aspects of it that are not clear to me. So it's not easy. It's not easy. So I'm just saying that not to discourage you, but just to help you understand that if you don't get it right away, don't worry. Don't feel bad. Yeah, it's normal that people don't understand it the first time or the second time or even the 100th time. You have to hear it again and again before you start to get some understanding of it. But even though it's a difficult topic, it's very important, extremely important. Why is it important? Anyone have an idea of that? Why is emptiness so important? Why do we try to understand it, even though it's so difficult to understand? What's the point? What's the need to understand emptiness?
Because reality exists different. That's what I think is a part of the teaching. That we see the reality not as it is.
Yeah, yeah. And then, so what?
Yeah.
So why do we need to see reality as it is?
Because we want to get out of our circle
Of suffering.
Suffering.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, did you want to say something?
And I think if we try to understand emptiness, then our actions and our thoughts will change. Our behavior will change. Will be more in a more better way to our environment, in a more beneficial way. I think so.
Yeah, yeah.
Because all the attachment and the anger will be reduced if we really do understand emptiness.
Yeah. Because let's just review the Four Noble Truths. I'm sure all of you have heard or read the Four Noble Truths, but it doesn't hurt to go through those again. So Buddha was very much aware that there are problems in the world, problems in life. I mean, he himself experienced problems, and he became aware of problems in the world around him, like sickness, people get sick, and they have other kinds of physical problems. We get old, our bodies get old, and the older we get, the more problems we have, and then eventually we die. And usually people aren't happy about that. Nobody really wants to die. And also those who are left behind suffer very much when their loved ones die. So death is another big problem in life. And then things like war, fighting, violence, people hurting each other, and then a lot of inner problems, like mentally, psychologically, we often suffer from depression, fear, anxiety, worry, many different kinds of emotional or psychological suffering. So there's many different kinds of problems in the world, and Buddha referred to these as suffering. He called these suffering. So suffering just means any kind of experience that we have which is unpleasant, unwanted. So there's a lot of that in the world, and everybody has it, not just some people, but even people who are very wealthy, billionaires. We sometimes think that millionaires and billionaires have an easy life and they don't have problems, but that's not true. They have problems too. They have suffering too. So everybody is subject to suffering. So the Buddha was very much aware of that and very concerned about that, and wanted to find a way to bring an end to suffering. And so he engaged in meditation to try to understand, why do we have suffering? Where does it come from? And is there a solution? Can we get rid of suffering? And he discovered this state of enlightenment, what we call Buddhahood or enlightenment. And this is a state free of suffering, beyond suffering. And then he shared his experiences with others so that they could achieve that state as well. So basically what the Buddha discovered is the root or the source of all the suffering and all the problems in the world is ignorance. Ignorance meaning not knowing reality. As Alexander said, we don't see reality. We don't see things as they are. And based on this lack of seeing the true nature of things, the reality of things, we're in a state of confusion, and we generate other kinds of states of mind that are not healthy, like anger and hatred and aggressiveness and violence. And then we act, people act on the basis of those states of mind, and that's when we have things like war, fighting, terrorism, violence, and so forth, which brings so much suffering. Or another unhealthy state of mind is like grasping, greedy, grasping, clinging to people, clinging to things, wanting them to be there forever, and wanting them to never disappear. But that leads to suffering too, because things are by nature impermanent. They don't last forever. They're not going to be there forever. They change, they go away. Then we're left feeling this great sense of loss and a lot of mental suffering. So Buddha saw that all the suffering in the world, all the unskillful actions that people do, harming others, stealing, lying, cheating, and so forth, they're all based on not seeing reality, not seeing the true nature of things. And so emptiness, or rather the understanding of emptiness, is the opposite to ignorance. It's like the antidote. It's like the solution, the medicine that cures this problem of ignorance. Because ignorance means we don't see the true nature of things. We don't see the truth, the reality of things. So emptiness is the truth, is the reality, is the way things exist. So if we can see that, and we can understand, emptiness is something we need to understand, okay? It's like the true nature of things, and what we need to do is see it, understand it, experience it. So when we can understand emptiness, that stops ignorance. We're no longer ignorant, because we see things as they are. We see the true nature of things, and when we see the true nature of things, then our mind changes completely. As Seven said, we see things differently, and we behave differently. We stop having all these disturbing emotions like anger and hatred, or greed, or jealousy, selfishness, and so forth. We become a completely different person. So our mind becomes different, our thoughts, our feelings become different, our actions, our way of acting to others becomes different. We stop causing suffering and problems to others and to ourselves. Instead, our actions become very positive, very beneficial for everybody. So we stop suffering ourselves, and we stop making suffering for other people. So that's why this is a very important topic, because it's like the ultimate solution, or the ultimate medicine to the problems, the suffering that we ourselves experience as individuals. And then, of course, there's the collective problems in the world that many, many people experience. So, of course, we can try to relieve problems as they arise, like when sickness comes. When people start getting sick, we can give them medicine and so forth. But even if one sickness is cured, another sickness comes. So just taking care of individual problems as they arise is okay, but it's not an ultimate solution. Another problem comes, and another problem comes. And this is what happens as long as we are ignorant, as long as we are in this state of ignorance, not knowing the true nature of things, not seeing the true nature of things. So let me just give an example to try to make it a little more clear. So often we have to deal with other people that we find hard to deal with. Difficult, what we would call difficult people, right? I'm sure we all have difficult people in our lives. Sometimes they're in our family. There may be some family members who are difficult. Or at work, people we have to work with who may be difficult. Or neighbors who may be difficult. So if you think of such an experience that you have with another person who you find you find difficult, and how painful that is, because you have to meet this person, sometimes you have to work with this person, you have to do things with this person, but you feel annoyed, irritated, maybe even angry, hateful towards this person. And sometimes just seeing that person, or just hearing the person's name, or hearing their voice, or thinking of them, can bring up these kind of feelings, these very unpleasant feelings in your mind. And then if you do have to work with them, maybe the way you talk to them and the way you behave with them isn't very nice and very friendly. There may be a big difference between the way you treat that person and the way you treat a friend, right? If you have someone you love very much, someone you get along with very much, it's such a nice relationship, the way you talk to that person, the way you behave with that person is so nice. But then with this person, it's like, ugh. It's like, you become like a different person, the way you behave with that person. It's like, the story of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I don't know exactly the story, but anyway, it's like one person who has two very different ways of behaving. One is very, very nice, very gentle. Another is just really horrible and mean and nasty. So the person goes back and forth between those two modes of being. So we can be that way sometimes ourselves. Some people are so nice, so sweet, it's such a nice way of behaving, and then with other people we're just really nasty. Have you ever noticed that? So if there's that kind of situation in your life, there's this difficult person you have to deal with, and it causes you a lot of unhappiness, a lot of problems, and also the way you behave with them isn't very nice either. So why does this happen? Why do we have this kind of situation? So according to Buddhist teachings, the basic problem is we don't see the true nature of ourself, for one thing, and also of the other person, and every other aspect of our relationship, the interactions we have, the actions we have, and so forth. So starting with our own self, okay, we all carry this sense of I, me, myself, right? We all feel I am a person, I am real, I exist. We have a sense of I. We talk about our I, we say I think this, I like that, I don't like that, I'm going to do that, yesterday I did that. So in our words, our expressions, we talk about our I. What do you say in German? Ich. Ich. Our ich. And even when we're not talking about our I, we still feel it. We still feel I'm here, I exist, I am a real person. And we have lots of thoughts in our mind, lots of emotions, lots of mental activity related to this sense of I. But do we know our I? Do we have a correct understanding of who or what we are? This sense of I that we feel? Do we ever even wonder about that? Some people do. Some people wonder, who am I? Who am I? What am I? But maybe they don't manage to find an answer to that question, so then they forget about it. But probably some people never think about that. They never wonder. They never question. They just go through life completely believing that they know who they are. They are in touch with their real nature, their real sense of I or self. So the Buddha said we should question that. We should investigate that. Who, or rather what? In Buddhism, the question isn't so much who am I, but rather what? What is the I? What kind of phenomena is it? what exactly is this thing we call I? When we feel there's an I, feels like there's an I, but what is it? And does it exist the way we think? Do we see it in a realistic way? Do we see our true nature? Or are we deluded? Are we confused? Are we mistaken about our real nature? So these are the kind of questions we ask, we investigate in this whole subject of emptiness. And then the other person, okay, this person we have difficulty with, the person we get so annoyed with and we treat in a very nasty way. So again, we have a sense of that person, he or she. And we probably think we know that person very well. We know what kind of person he is or she is. We know he's a really horrible person. But how do we know? Are we right? Can we be 100% sure that we do know that person? That we really know who that person is, how that person exists? It's another thing to question. In other words, do we have a correct understanding of the true nature, the reality of that person? We think we do, but do we really? Again, this is something to question. Maybe you've had the experience, I'm sure we've all had this experience in our life, where there was somebody we thought we knew very well. Sometimes it could even be your spouse. You might be married to somebody for years and years and years and years, you know? And you kind of think you know that person very well. And then one day, something happens, the person changes, does something very unexpected, or you might find out something about that person that you're totally shocked. I can't, how could that be? How could that person be that way? Have you ever had that experience? Where you think you know somebody really well, but then one day you get this shock that you find out something about the person, or something, they behave in a certain way that you say, it's impossible. How could they be that way? Have you ever had that experience? Yes. So that kind of shows that, you know, we have this tendency to think that we know the true nature of a person, for example. Yeah? But then we discover that there's something about the person we don't know. And in fact, if we really ask ourselves, if you take an example of a person that you think you know, and you ask yourself, do I really know that person? Do I really know everything about that person? All their thoughts, all their feelings, all their emotions, everything that's part of that person's world, that person's mind, do I really know that person? I think we'll probably have to say no. No, even to know ourselves is very difficult, right? Sometimes we get this shock with ourselves. Sometimes some kind of thought will come up in our mind, some kind of feeling will come up in our mind, some kind of experience will happen to us, and it's like, where did that come from? You know? It's like we never thought that such a thing could happen to us. So these kind of experiences can cause us to sort of ask questions. Well, do I really know reality? You know, I think I know myself, I think I know other people, I think I know the world around me, but do I really know things as they are? Do I know things as they really are? So these are kind of questions that we ask in this topic of emptiness. And I mean, what the Buddha said, based on his own experience, because he was once an ordinary person like ourselves. He wasn't always enlightened. And he went through a process of investigating his own mind, his own experience, and his way of seeing things. And what he discovered was that, we have a lot of delusions, we have a lot of misunderstandings, misconceptions about the way things exist. And that is our basic problem, because we don't see things as they really are. And when we can change that and come to see things as they really are, their truth, their reality, everything changes completely. We become like a completely different person. Like, for example, one of my teachers once made this statement that I found really wonderful, really beautiful. He said, if we could see the true nature of others, other people, other beings, we would have nothing but love and compassion for them. Mm-hmm. So I found that amazing. I like that idea. I would like to have love and compassion for everybody. So if you turn that around and you think, well, if we don't have love and compassion for somebody or for some people, it's because we don't see their true nature. We don't see how they really are. Because if we did see how they really are, we wouldn't feel angry or hateful or negative towards them. So if we do have those kind of feelings, it's because we don't see their true nature. We don't see them as they really are. So I don't know, does what I'm saying make any sense? Mm-hmm. What I'm trying to point out is the importance of understanding emptiness, because understanding emptiness means understanding the true nature of ourselves and others, and also everything in the world around us. And when we can see, understand, experience the true nature of things, we stop having negative feelings like anger and hatred and aversion and irritation and jealousy and all these very painful emotions, very painful states of mind. Those stop. We don't have those anymore. Mm-hmm. And then also the way we behave towards others. We won't be nasty to people. We won't have difficulty with people. Because this nastiness and difficulty that we have with other people is based on not seeing their true nature. So it's important to have some understanding of emptiness, because it's like I was saying before, it's like the ultimate solution, the ultimate antidote, the ultimate medicine to our suffering, to our problems. It's what brings peace. It's what brings real peace, real happiness, real beauty, all these positive qualities like love and compassion and so forth. So if we can understand emptiness, we ourselves will be a much happier person. We won't have problems and suffering. And then the way we treat other people, the kind of interactions we have with other people, will be beneficial for them. We'll stop doing things that hurt others, cause problems to others, and instead we'll just become beneficial to others. So these are benefits of understanding emptiness. Things that we can start to experience just in our daily life. But then the real benefit, the ultimate benefit, is becoming enlightened, becoming a Buddha. So if you want to achieve those goals, then understanding emptiness is definitely necessary. So, as I say, understanding emptiness is not easy. And what I've learned in my studies is that it's helpful to work on more kind of preliminary understandings, like steps, like taking steps towards an understanding of emptiness. Because emptiness is the true nature of things, but it's something very deep, very subtle, very hard to see. And we could say it's, you know, an onion. An onion has different layers, right? So there's the heart of the onion right in the middle. But in order to get to the heart, you have to peel away the outer layers. So in the same way, emptiness is like at the heart, at the core of things, of the way things exist. And to get to emptiness, then there are other things we can work on understanding. And if by understanding those, that helps us to get closer to an understanding of emptiness. So one of these is impermanence. So I thought maybe tonight we could start looking at that, talking about that. Because they say if we can understand impermanence, really understand impermanence, and that takes us closer to an understanding of emptiness. And then as we go along in the weekend, I'll talk about some other steps that help us get closer to an understanding of emptiness. Because impermanence itself is a reality, it's a way of existing of things, but we tend to be kind of blind to it. We tend to not see it. So this is like one example of a way in which we don't see the true nature of things. Impermanence is a more gross or coarse reality of things, not as subtle as emptiness, but it's still something very, very important, something we definitely need to understand. So impermanence, there's different meanings of impermanence. One is what's called coarse or gross impermanence, and that is when, for example, things go out of existence, like somebody dies, or a building is what do you call it, demolished or burned down. So something that existed before stops existing, goes out of existence somehow. So that's called gross or coarse impermanence because it's obvious. We can see it. It's like one day a building was there, and the next day you go and it's just a pile of stones, dust. Or one day a person is alive, the next day they're not. So these are examples of impermanence which are obvious. And then there's another level of impermanence which is called subtle impermanence. And this is not so obvious. Subtle impermanence, is there a problem? Oh, it fell down. Sorry. It's probably my Zen that fell down. Maybe if I put it here. Sorry, did some of you miss some of the things? It's better. It's better now. So was there something I said earlier that you didn't hear?
No, it's not a problem for now, for later, for this.
You just didn't want it to get any worse. Okay, so subtle impermanence. Subtle impermanence then means that things are changing every single moment, constantly. Yeah. So this is something I think we know from science, like physics. I'm not a physicist, but what they say in physics is that phenomena like our bodies, for example, and all the things in this room, the tables, the floor, the carpets, the cushions we're sitting on, our clothes, and so on. So all these material things are made of very small particles, like atoms, subatomic particles. And there's constant movement, constant change taking place on the level of these very tiny particles. Constantly, like every moment. Every moment, all these things are actually changing. They're not so solid as they appear. So that's the meaning of subtle impermanence. Subtle impermanence means that things are changing every single moment. So, in fact, this I mean, one way of looking at subtle impermanence is that there's actual death taking place every moment. Because whatever existed in one moment, or the way that that phenomenon existed in one moment, is already gone in the next moment. So it's like a little death that's taking place each moment. So things are actually dying and changing every single moment. And that's true, like I said, that's true for our bodies, yeah, our bodies and every single part of our body. And also the things in the world around us, all these material things. The world itself, the planet, Earth, and all the things on the earth, the mountains and trees and rivers and plants and all the things we produce. Tables and houses and cars and food and so forth. So all these material things are impermanent. It's changing every single moment. So this is a reality. And it's, even though we call it a subtle impermanence, it's not as subtle as emptiness. Emptiness is much more subtle than that. It's called subtle because we can't see it. You know, it's something we can't, it's not visible to us. But if you look under a microscope, you can see the cells moving, changing. But without a microscope, we cannot see that very subtle change that's taking place, moment by moment. So then you might think, well, so what? This is actually something very profound, very, very profound. Buddha said it's very important for us to meditate on or contemplate impermanence, because it's the way things exist. And yet we tend to not see things in that way. We tend to see things as permanent rather than impermanent. Right? And I mean, one reason for that is because we can't actually see subtle impermanence. We can't see the momentary changes taking place in phenomena. But I think another reason is more emotional. We want things to stay the same. We don't want things to change. Especially the beautiful things, like these beautiful flowers. Yeah, they look so beautiful, so fresh. So we would like them to stay that way, day after day after day. But of course that's not realistic. As the days go by, they're going to get more and more withered and turn brown and droopy and smelly, and so it's just not possible to wish for them to not change and to just remain that way. So, I mean, to a certain extent, we do know about impermanence. We do know that flowers aren't going to last forever. And we do know that people are not going to last forever. You know, if somebody asks us, you know, is that person going to be there forever? We'll have to say, well, no. But in terms of our emotions, you know, when it comes to our emotions, we want them to be there forever. Somebody we love, somebody we care about, someone who's very, very important to us, we feel, I don't want them to go away. I don't want them to disappear. I want them to be there forever. So it's a kind of wishful thinking, wishful, hopeful feeling of, at least for the people we like. Maybe the people we don't like, we feel differently. we don't want them to be there forever. We hope they will disappear quickly. But when it comes to the things we like, the things we find attractive and wonderful and bring us happiness, we want them to stay, not to change and not go away. But then this leads to problems. This kind of attitude leads to problems because then we get attached. We get attached to people, we get attached to things, we get attached to our own body, to our life. We want these things to stay forever. Then when they do change, when some kind of change takes place, we have a big problem. We fall apart. We get very upset. We suffer from grief, from a sense of loss, from depression, from sadness, from many painful feelings when people and things do change. So this becomes problematic. And it doesn't have to be that way. If we, as the Buddha said, if we meditate on impermanence, if we acquaint ourselves with impermanence, if we come to see things as impermanent rather than permanent, then we won't suffer so much. We won't have this devastating sense of loss and grief when someone dies or someone goes away or some kind of change happens. Because we've already prepared ourselves for that. We already know that's going to happen. I mean, there'll probably still be some sense of unhappiness, but not as much as if we had never thought about impermanence. And instead, if we always clung to this wishful thinking, hope that person would be there forever. So that's one benefit of thinking about impermanence. It helps us to be more prepared for experiences of loss that take place in our life, which are inevitable, right? I mean, we don't like to think about it. Many people try to avoid thinking about death, yeah? But it's better to think about it, to prepare ourselves for it, because it's going to happen. One day we are going to die. This one here is going to die. So we're going to have to go through our own death. And even before we die, people we know will die. We will experience the death of others. People in our family, our mother, our father, brothers, sisters, friends, maybe your own children. Yeah, that sometimes happens, that children can die before their parents. So if we always try to avoid thinking about death and impermanence, then if that happens, when that happens, I should say, when we experience the death of a loved one, someone very important to us, it will be extremely painful. Very, very, very difficult. Whereas if we have already thought about impermanence, if we thought about, yes, I'm going to die one day, other people are going to die one day, we're not going to be here forever. If we've prepared ourselves mentally, then when it happens, it will probably still be painful, but not as painful. It will be less painful. It will be easier to be able to handle it more easily. So that's one benefit. I read in a book about this topic of death and impermanence is quite kind of popular in Buddhism. You know, there's a lot of talk about it in Buddhism. So there's books about it, and one book about death told the story of one man in Burma, a Buddhist man, and he was just a normal man with a family and a job and so on. But he would get up in the morning and do some practice, different practices, prayers and so on. And one of his practices was to take his prayer beads, like a rosary, and he would count one bead for each person that he knew. And he would say, that person is going to die, that person is going to die, that person is going to die, that person. And I thought, that's a very interesting practice. But I think that would be very helpful, you know, to remind ourselves every day that these people who we know, who are part of our life, are not going to be there forever. They're all going to disappear one day. So, you know, it doesn't mean you have to become depressed and dark and heavy about it. It's just accepting the truth, the reality that these people are going to go one day. And actually a benefit of this, there's actually a benefit to this, is that you will appreciate those people much more. Because sometimes we take people for granted. If we don't think that they're going to die one day, then we have this feeling they're going to be there forever. They're going to be there forever. And then we might become kind of careless in our relationship and not be very nice to them and ignore them sometimes, not really care about them very much. Because we just think, oh, they're always going to be there, so I don't have to be so nice to them. Whereas if we realize they're not going to be there forever, then we realize how precious they are. The time, whatever time we have to be together is very, very precious. So we want to make sure that we take care of them. We are nice to them. And I don't know if you've ever had the experience of if you've found out about like one of your family members or friends or whatever has a terminal illness and they're going to, it's very clear that they're not going to be around much longer. Then you might feel, oh, that person is so precious, and you really want to take care of them and really want to make sure that the time, whatever time you have left in your relationship with that person is really good quality. Right? So you're really caring for them and careful with them. Have you had that experience? Yeah? I mean, I had that experience with my mother when I was with her for the last few weeks of her life. I just felt, wow, she is so precious, and I just wanted to stay with her and do whatever I could for her and really take care of her and be with her right up to the last moment. So it's like, I always valued her very much, but when I knew that she wasn't going to be around much longer, I really, my appreciation of her just grew so much. So anyway, that's one benefit. When we realize that people are impermanent, they're not going to be there forever, we will appreciate them much more, we will cherish them much more, and our relationship will be much better. So there's benefits that we can experience kind of in an immediate sense by contemplating impermanence. So that's one benefit of contemplating impermanence in terms of like relationships. But I find a lot of other benefits of impermanence, contemplating impermanence. For example, one of my favorite topics, and this is what I was teaching the last 2 times I came here, was working with disturbing emotions. How we can work on our emotions like anger and attachment. I don't know, I probably didn't go through all the different disturbing emotions, but anyway, these kind of emotions that come up in us and are unpleasant and problematic. And so one effective tool in working with these disturbing emotions is to remind ourselves that they are impermanent. Yeah? Because they are. They are impermanent. They're not permanent. They don't last forever. Right? We have attacks. We have these attacks of being angry or being depressed, or we say panic attacks. Right? So they come. They arise in our mind for a period of time. They may last a few moments, a few minutes, maybe a few hours, but eventually they will go away. They don't last forever, right? We don't remain angry forever and ever and ever. We don't remain in a state of panic or anxiety forever and ever and ever. We just go through that experience and then it passes. So that's the reality. That's their nature. Their nature is to come and go. Sometimes they're there, sometimes they're not. So when we do find ourselves having an attack of one of these disturbing emotions, if we remind ourselves, oh, this is impermanent, it's not going to last forever, it's just a state of mind, it's just something happening in my mind, and it's going to pass. So reminding ourselves of that gives some immediate relief. Yeah? Because otherwise we might feel, oh, oh, there's my anger again. As if I'm always angry. It's something permanent. It's always been there, it always will be there. It seems really heavy and strong and overwhelming. Or depression. I think this can happen especially with depression. We may feel like depression is somehow a permanent state, a permanent part of us. It's always there. And I'm sure if we really look carefully at our experience, we will see that it's sometimes there, but not always. It comes and goes. And the more you meditate, if you practice meditation and you really observe your mind, you really observe thoughts, feelings, experiences in your mind, you see this much more clearly. You can really see that these things come and go. They come and go. They're not permanent. They're not always there. This is the reality. This is the truth. The true nature of your mind, the true nature of your experience is that these disturbing thoughts and emotions, Buddha says they're like clouds in the sky. They come and they go. They're not permanent. So reminding ourselves of the impermanent nature of disturbing or negative thoughts and emotions is very helpful. To realize that they're not a permanent part of us. And there are things that we can do to work on them. There are ways we can work on our mind and we can actually reduce the disturbing thoughts and emotions. And learn to handle them when they do arise. So that's another example of how understanding impermanence or seeing things in terms of impermanence is helpful in our daily life. It actually is something like a tool, a method we can use in our daily life for problems that we might have. Does what I'm saying make sense? Do any of you have any questions you want to ask? Yeah.
I was wondering if I understood you correctly. You were saying emptiness, or rather impermanence, is less subtle than emptiness, or emptiness is even more subtle. And would you say it's a state of mind then? Are both understanding impermanence and understanding emptiness states of mind?
Yeah.
And is impermanence part of emptiness, or is emptiness a state of mind where impermanence is no longer part of or existent in?
Okay, so both impermanence and emptiness are like objects to be understood, to be experienced. They themselves are not states of mind. Emptiness is not a state of mind. Impermanence is not a state of mind. But we can have a state of mind that understands impermanence, or understands emptiness. And when it comes to a state of mind that understands impermanence or understands emptiness, there can also be different states of mind. One is like a kind of intellectual or conceptual understanding. Yeah? Like, okay, like now I'm talking about what impermanence means. Okay, so if you listen to this, you can get some understanding. Oh, this is what impermanence means. Okay, so that's like an intellectual or conceptual understanding of impermanence. But there's also an understanding of impermanence that becomes like a direct experience. I haven't experienced this, but they say that through the practice of meditation, you can actually get to the point where you see impermanence. You see directly this momentary change that's taking place. You can actually see the atoms, the molecules, the tiny particles moving and changing. You see impermanence. So that's a real experience.
So it's like a palpable or a felt sensation.
State of mind.
State of mind.
State of mind where you are directly experiencing impermanence, and the same with emptiness. So by hearing teachings and thinking and meditating, studying emptiness, we can get a kind of intellectual understanding of emptiness. But then, further than that, you can actually get to the point where you directly see emptiness, you directly experience it. So they say that's the kind of experience we need to get, where it's beyond just an intellectual understanding, but it's a direct experience of it.
And is there, are there teachings that tell us, because seeing is really just one breath above, I mean, it's a coarse sensation ultimately, right? So I'm assuming you're not, it's not just seeing, it's really, I mean, a more extensive sensation than just seeing it, or is it really seeing molecules move around the?
I don't know, because I don't have that experience myself. But no, maybe it's when we talk about like directly seeing emptiness or directly seeing impermanence, it's mainly a mental consciousness, not a visual consciousness.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. It's mainly on the level of the mental consciousness.
And that would be my final question for right now is, you were talking about delusions and the coarser delusions and then more subtle delusions. And when do you actually know, or when does anyone know that we've kind of hit the full-blown understanding of emptiness? You understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying when do I know that it's not just another delusion that I haven't come across yet, or that's so subtle that I think it's emptiness, but it's not actually understanding, of course.
Yeah, well, that's a good question, because emptiness is very subtle, and they say that there are experiences one might have where you might think you've realized emptiness, but it's not. So that's why they say it's very important to study emptiness, and especially if you can receive teachings on it from someone who's realized it, you know, a Lama who's actually realized emptiness themselves, and so they can explain it from their own experience. So it's important to get good teachings, reliable teachings, but also spend time thinking and studying. They say it's very important to study reliable texts as well, and meditate. So it's kind of a long process. And you might, at some point, have some kind of experience and you think, oh, maybe that was a realization of emptiness. But it's always good to go and check with somebody. You know, someone who is more experienced than you, and they would be able to tell if it was or wasn't. Because sometimes it does happen. People do sometimes have experiences where they think, oh, that was a realization of emptiness, or that was nirvana, or that was enlightenment, but actually they're way off the mark. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Anyone else? We shouldn't underestimate this idea of impermanence, because even though we may have an intellectual understanding of impermanence, we might know, yes, it's true, things are impermanent, they're subject to change, they're not going to last forever. But to actually make that part of our experience, we need to not just think about it intellectually, but the Buddha said we really need to meditate on it again and again and again. And just as an example, I recently spoke with a friend who I've known a long time. She's been a Buddhist a very long time, I think 30 years at least. And recently her husband left her for another woman. And of course she found that very painful, but she also made the comment, I never thought that would happen. I suppose that's normal. I may have been would have done the same if I was married. But, I mean, that just kind of shows how we tend to think of things as permanent. You know, okay, there's that my husband is there, and he's going to be there forever, and he's not going to ever leave me. Just to show, even if we're Buddhist and we've been studying many years and meditating many years and even teaching, it's still very difficult to stop thinking in terms of permanence. To stop seeing things as permanent and really see them as impermanent. And also my own experience with my mother. When I was with my mother, I think it's been about 5 years since she died. So, I mean, I tried to prepare myself, you know, I knew, I would think, okay, she's going to die one day, and I would try to imagine her dying and how I would feel and so forth. So I really tried to prepare myself for that. But still, when it actually happened, I wasn't prepared for that at all. I mean, you know, at the time she was dying, I was very calm, and for about one day afterwards, I was kind of calm and doing all the things that needed to be done. But then at some point, it hit me. You know, the loss of my mother hit me, and it was just, I've never had such a profound experience before. So it's not easy to really get impermanence, to really understand it beyond just an intellectual understanding, but to really experience that this is the reality of things. Ourselves, our bodies, everyone else around us, everything else around us as well. All of these things are really not going to be there forever. And not only that, but they're changing every single minute, every single second. That's very profound when you think about it. It can be a bit scary as well, yeah? A bit frightening to think about. But it's very important. The Buddha said this is one of the most important meditations. Very, very important to understand impermanence, because it helps us to stop having attachment, grasping, wanting things to be there forever, which is it's a delusion. You know, like grasping at these flowers, wanting these flowers to be there forever. That's kind of crazy, because it's just not possible. So not seeing things as impermanent leads to confusion, leads to kind of mistaken, unhealthy states of mind. What do you think? Do you think this is what I'm saying? I mean, it's something to think about, but you say the Buddha said it's very, very important.
But I have a question. It's maybe a very simple question, but I've met people where I was shocked about their behavior, and sometimes I was shocked at my own behavior. I thought I would never have done this, why did I do this? But fact is that I know more people in my life who never change. Like my Aunt Edith.
Sorry?
My Aunt Edith, she, whenever I visit her for maybe 40 years, it's always the same subject. Always on Christmas, the same subject, the same record, the same CD, always about her sons, who disappointed her. And last year she died, and the year before, before she died, it was still the same subject. So, for me, it is a fact that my Aunt Edith never changed.
Didn't she get older?
She got older, but her thoughts, her state of mind never changed.
Well, I mean, change takes place at different levels. So, I mean, one level is the physical level, right? So definitely her body changed. So you can't say she didn't change at all. The body changed, right?
Her body changed definitely, but never. It was like the same when she started a sentence. I could put it to the end. What she said never changed.
Well, I think she probably did have changes happening in her mind, but maybe not so obvious to us. Yeah, because when we practice meditation and we watch our mind, we observe our mind, we can see for ourselves that the mind is also an impermanent phenomenon. Permanence doesn't only apply to physical things like our bodies, but it's also the quality of the mind. The mind is by nature impermanent. Every moment there are different thoughts. But I mean, it's true that our mind can go through the same loop, the same tape again and again and again. But it's not exactly the same. It's never exactly the same. I mean, maybe you need to kind of have more experience looking at the mind and seeing how the mind works. Let's just say our breath, okay? We are breathing in and out, okay? Constantly, I don't know how many times a minute, but our breath is coming in and going out. So in one sense, we can say our breath never changes. It's always coming in and going out. But then if you ask yourself, is every breath exactly the same? Every breath that I take, is it exactly the same as the one before? What do you think?
I don't know. I never paid attention.
Well, I mean, it's hard to say for sure, but when you just think about it, the breath, when we breathe, we're breathing in air, right? And there's certain molecules, chemicals in the air that we breathe in, and then we breathe it out again. So the next time we breathe in, is it exactly the same air that we breathed in the first time? Probably not, right? And then there's probably also very subtle changes taking place in our nose and in our lungs. And I mean, obviously, yeah, there are changes taking place. Our body's changing every moment. So the body that's breathing in air in one moment, isn't this exactly the same as the body that's breathing in one moment later? Right? There are changes. I'm just saying this on the physical level. On the physical level, our body's changing every moment. And also the air around us, the air that we're breathing is changing every moment. So when you think about that, then it's not exactly the same. It may look the same, may be very similar, but not exactly the same. So I think it's similar with the mind. Even though our mind might, or our speech, might go through something very similar again and again and again, but if you really check carefully, analyze carefully, is it exactly the same as it was before? I would say no. I would say it may be similar, but there's got to be some changes taking place. So I don't know, I just think if you analyze more carefully your aunt, Edith, is it?
Edith, yes.
Aunt Edith, if you look more carefully, analyze more carefully, then you might notice, well, yeah, there was something a little bit different there each time she said this, or from one Christmas to the next. I mean, in a very gross way, yeah, maybe very similar. But if you look more carefully, more subtly, there's probably some changes. So this is what I'm talking about. Subtle impermanence is very subtle. It is very subtle. It's not easy to see on the surface. We have to look deeper. So, I don't know. I think everybody does change. Even though, I mean, we have habits. We have certain tendencies, and things that we do again and again and again. But if you look carefully, deeply, I think you will see that there are subtle changes taking place. It's not exactly the same from one day to the next. Does anyone else have any ideas about this?
Maybe you think it's another phenomenon, because I believe we learned so less in one life, so small possibility to learn in this life. It's maybe this phenomenon. Our life is too short to learn more, and that's the way we are seeing not really big changes in our life. That's my opinion, maybe.
So have you looked at this person over a longer period of time?
Yes, we need maybe more time
lives.
to develop them.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if this is what you're talking about, but like in Buddhism we say that people don't have only one life, but
Yes,
before this we had other lives, and after this we have other lives. So when you look from that point of view, then there's more possibility for change. Because people might say, for example, like some people are so bad, they're so evil, and they never change. They never become good within that lifetime. They're bad right up until their death, evil right up until they die. But Buddhism would say, yeah, well, okay, maybe that life. In that life, the person was very bad, but they all have other lives. And also before, maybe in some past life, the person was very good, did very good things. And then again, in the future, that person will change and do good things. So if you look in a broader, wider perspective, then there's more chance for change. I mean, that's the Buddhist view, because Buddhism says everybody has the ability to totally transform themselves and become free of all the negative, evil things, all the bad things, and become completely good, completely positive, like a Buddha. Everybody can become a Buddha. I mean, of course, that may take many lifetimes, but it is possible. If you only look in terms of one lifetime, then it's difficult to imagine how some people can become Buddhas. So, sorry. But Buddhists would say, no, never mind, that person will change. Even Mao Zedong, even Stalin, even Hitler, even Osama bin Laden, and all these, people who did such horrible things and create so much suffering in the world. Yeah, this lifetime they didn't do so well, but there will be other lifetimes. Give them more time, give them more opportunities. They will change. But of course that's very difficult. I know many Western people have difficulty believing in other lives. Yeah? Past lives, future lives. That's not so easy. So, work for everybody. Any other questions?
Well, my question goes to a completely different direction. Because I've heard some teachings on emptiness from different schools, and like non-duality often figures quite prominently if they speak about emptiness. And whenever I hear teachings from the Gelugpa school, it's always dependent arising and like kind of the same focus. Does non-duality figure, or is it part of this view on emptiness?
Well, the word non-duality, the term non-duality can have different meanings. So when you say non-duality, what do you mean by non-duality?
Well, that's kind of the test if I understood them correctly. Well, mostly it comes in in connection with these words of the Purana Paramita, like form is emptiness, emptiness is form, form is not an emptiness. And from this they draw the conclusion that there is no duality, like form is is both emptiness and form at the same time.
I mean, the term in my studies in the Gelugpa tradition, the term non-duality definitely comes in. But like I say, it has different meanings, so we have to clarify which meaning of non-duality. But it said that when a person has a direct realization of emptiness, like I was saying before, that's when your mind really sees emptiness, experiences emptiness directly. It's not just a conceptual experience, but a direct experience of emptiness. So at that time, the experience is non-dualistic, in the sense that, well, it gets kind of complicated. What does it mean to have non-dualistic? But one meaning of non-dualistic is that the subject, meaning the mind, that is experiencing emptiness, and emptiness, which is being experienced, merge non-dualistically. There's no sense of subject and object, but it's like just one thing. The subject merges with the object, rather than a sense of I'm over here and emptiness is over there. So that's the kind of experience you have. And they say that's non-dualistic. So that's one meaning of non-dualistic, is merging of subject and object. But I think that only happened, no, I guess there can be other experiences, similar experiences, like they say when you attain calm abiding, which is a very highly developed experience of concentration, then you're meditating on an object. You always have an object you're meditating on, and you can have a kind of non-dualistic experience with that. It seems as if your mind merges with the object. But yeah, so there are other instances where you could have a non-dualistic experience. So definitely in the Gelugpa tradition they talk about non-dual, but we have to be very careful, because sometimes people use the word non-dualistically in a very vague way. Not, they're not very clear at all what they're talking about. They just say everything is just one. Everything is one. Everything is the same. What do you mean by that? So definitely there are experiences of non-duality, non-dualistic experiences, but like I say, what we're trying to achieve is a non-dualistic experience of emptiness. And that's not easy to get. You might have a non-dualistic experience, but it's not a non-dualistic experience of emptiness. I don't know if that's helpful what I'm saying, but yeah. And then the thing about the form and emptiness, the Gelugpa explanation of that would be that, like a flower, let's say, this flower, it's a flower, and it has emptiness as its ultimate nature. So there's the emptiness of the flower. The emptiness is a quality. It's like the true nature of the flower is emptiness. But I mean, I'll go later what actually emptiness means. I haven't yet said what emptiness means. I'll do that over the weekend. But let's just say emptiness is the ultimate nature of the flower. So the flower and its emptiness, the emptiness of the flower, are said to be one entity. One entity, one nature. Meaning they can't be separated. You can't separate the emptiness of the flower from the flower. Wherever the flower is, its emptiness is. So that's how the Gelugpas would explain this. Form is empty, emptiness is form. That form and emptiness, there are two different things. They're not the same thing. The flower and its emptiness aren't the same thing, but they are one entity. They're indivisible. But it's too late, I think, at night to drink. We'll talk about that more. So maybe it's a good time to stop here. And so tomorrow we start at 10, isn't it? 10 o'clock.
Yes.
So I thought maybe we could start in the morning with some meditation. We could do some meditation on impermanence. Tonight I was talking about impermanence, and it's nice to do some meditation on that, but it's better to do in the morning. Hopefully our minds will be more fresh and awake and alert. So let's stop here, and let's just take a few moments to make a meditation of our positive energy. So we've come together and spent the last few hours together, and we started off with a positive motivation, the wish to be of benefit to others as much as we can. So during this period of time we've created some good energy, some positive energy, listening to, thinking about, doing some meditation on these teachings. So this positive energy we've created is the cause of happiness, the cause of our minds growing on the spiritual path, getting closer to enlightenment. So the best thing we can do with this positive energy is to share it with others, with the wish that it will bring happiness, peace of mind, benefit, and ultimately enlightenment to as many other people and beings as possible, to all beings, if possible. So see if you can make that kind of wish, that dedication in your mind. Okay, thank you. And good night. Tomorrow.